Hi, it's Danielle here, and today I'm conducting a checkout inspection of a 2-bedroom furnished property. The checkout is one of the single most important parts of the end of tenancy process. It's where the inventory clerk inspects the property and determines whether there are any changes, defects, or damages within that property. They create a detailed photographic and written record using the original inventory as a guide and comparing the present condition with the previous condition from the start of the tenancy. I'll be walking you through my process and showing you exactly how I assess changes and damages and how I determine liabilities. So follow me as I go, and I hope you enjoy. So I've just finished inspecting the first room in the property, which is listed as the entrance hallway. I've referenced and had a look through the inventory report, and the cleaning clearly states that the property was professionally cleaned at the start of the tenancy. So that's one of the first things I'm looking at, and the carpets were all steam cleaned, and now we can clearly see that they're a little bit dusty. There's a little bit of debris, and they haven't been professionally steam cleaned. There's no lifting of the pile. There's no distinct signs that the carpets have been steam cleaned, and it's pretty obvious that they haven't. So I started off from the front door. Everything was listed in the inventory item by item, so that's exactly the same way that I went through the checkout. Started off by having a look at the door, making sure that the keys are all working. So I've made sure to test every single key in the lock to make sure that it opens and closes, and that's just parts of the process. And the keys that were returned by the tenant were all photographed and recorded on the inventory report, and that's just to make sure that all of the keys were correct, and that they work in the front door and everything can be secured properly. So after having a look at the door, I moved my way over to the walls, and as you can see, they're quite scuffed and heavily marked. Now, as we're in the hallway, it is a very high use area, so whether or not you have a 6 months tenancy or up to 2 years, the hallway always experiences a lot more wear and tear than any other part of the property. So in order to make a fair judgment, we have a look and see is there a few scuff marks. Okay, that's fine. People are walking up and down, you may have children, and you're using this area really frequently. But anything that is deemed as excessive would be anything like this, which is really, really heavy scratches. I don't know what could have caused that. Maybe something has grazed the wall, but that kind of thing would be recorded as a liability on the checkout report and would be highlighted as well. Other scuff marks would generally be just considered as wear and tear. They're scattered about. So then I moved on to having a look at the ceilings. Both of the light bulbs are working. That's something that's really important at checkout to record, because if all of the light bulbs are working at the start of the tenancy, it's expected that the same would happen at the end of the tenancy. And then I went on to the contents. There's not much in this hallway. There's a shoe rack and this little bench item here. Now the shoe rack was originally listed on the inventory, and this bench was not, so this was added as an additional item, and that will be recorded as a liability in the report. And that's simply because you take a zero tolerance approach to items that are left behind. You can't pick and choose which items are okay to be left behind by the tenant. You just have to take a blanket approach with it. So if something has been left in the kitchen, cutlery, plates, then that is seen in the same light as, a sofa or an item of furniture being left. Because at the end of the day, if the landlord doesn't want it and it wasn't provided at the start of the tenancy, then it has to be removed by somebody. And if that's going to cause an extra expense, additional time to be removed, then either the tenant has to be given the opportunity to take that away and remove it, or the landlord has to take care of that themselves. So that was everything recorded in the hallway. On to the next room. Okay, so onto the bathroom. I have gone through everything item by item, made sure that I've flushed the loo, made sure the tap's working, and had a look at the cleaning as well. So one of the first things I did was just turn on the extractor to make sure that was working, which it is. And then had a look at the walls. Now you can see there's some pre-existing damage there. The check-in report clearly stated that there were a few marks on this wall, and I can see on the check-in report as well that that damage was already there. The only additional item that was added was this one nail in the wall. Providing tenants have the permission to put nails and hooks up in walls, that's fine. But if not, it will be recorded as a liability on the checkout inspection report. Everything in here was also nice and clean. Toilet was nice and clean, floors are nice and clean. Nothing is broken or damaged. The only thing was, I think there's a few additional items. So the mop and bucket were added to this report, a broom, and the toilet roll holder as well. Again, zero tolerance to additional items being left in the property, because if you allow one or two things to pass, then you may find that you have loads and loads of items of contents that tenants before have left behind, and that just becomes a pain when it comes to starting a new tenancy and having to remove additional things that don't actually belong to the landlord, and you just end up with clutter. So those have been added in. There's also two kind of watermarks on the ceiling here. That damage was already recorded at check-in, so that won't affect the existing tenant whatsoever. All I'll do is just have a look at the photographs and make sure that it hasn't gotten any worse. If it has gotten worse, that will be recorded on the report as well, and that will just enable the landlord to keep an eye on it and see whether there's anything that can be done to either repair it externally or just make it cosmetically look better. So yeah, that's the bathroom. On to the next room we go. I'll now be inspecting the reception room. There are a few items of contents, sofas, coffee table, TV, and a few other bits and bobs in this room. So I'm going to take my time. It should take me about 20 minutes or so, just to make sure that I can check everything item by item, make sure that all of the furniture, as well as fixtures and fittings, and everything else is in good decorative order. And I will also be taking photos as I go along as well. So you can follow me along with this one, and I'll give you a debrief of everything that I've recorded at the end, so you can see the process that I've gone through to determine any changes, damages, or liabilities. Okay, so I have finished inspecting the reception room. I went through everything item by item, starting off from the front door. So I will walk you through some of the things that I recorded on the checkout inspection. Of course, I used the inventory report as a reference to determine whether there were any changes, any damages, defects, anything that was different from the original condition the property was received in 2 years ago. So at the start, a few additional scuff marks on the door. They're not excessive, it's been a 2-year tenancy, so that's wear and tear. Moved on to having a look at some of the furniture. You can see that this mirror is a little bit damaged. That was pre-existing, so that was just something that was ignored. It was noted on the check-in report. Walls are all generally okay. A few scuff marks here and there, but they weren't freshly painted when the tenant moved in, so there's a permitted allowance for wear and tear. A few scuff marks, that's fine. There's no additional hooks or nails in the walls, so in general the walls are really in great condition. Went on to have a look at the flooring. So these carpets, they are a little bit marked. They weren't perfect when the tenant moved in, but there are a few additional stains, which you can see over here. A few heavy brown marks and stains, and some right in front of the sofa there. So the carpets were professionally steam cleaned at the start of the tenancy. They haven't been steam cleaned for the checkout, and they look like they've just been lightly hoovered. So that's something that I'll be recording as a liability for this room on the checkout. I also had a look at the windows. At first glance they look fine, they look okay, but on closer inspection they haven't actually been properly cleaned. The window sills are a little bit dusty, and there is quite a big stain on the windowsill as well, and they haven't been wiped either. The window sills are just quite dusty. So that's something I'll be recording as a cleaning issue on the checkout report. I did attempt to release the blind as well, but it looks like it's been so tightly pulled that it's almost impossible to get enough leverage to release that. So that will just be a maintenance issue. And the pelmet that's missing on the top there, that was already missing at the start of the tenancy. There were a few marks on the sofas. These sofas were steam cleaned at the start of the tenancy, so I'll make a note of that too. And these armchairs as well, they were quite worn. The fabric was torn at the beginning of the tenancy. It's gotten a little bit worse, so that's just something that I've made a note of so that the landlord is aware of the current condition. But that's fair wear and tear anyway. So yeah, that's everything that was recorded in this room. Oh, one last thing. There's one blown light bulb there. Everything else was fine. All of the wall lights are working. TV's fine. And there was a lot of pre-existing damage already. I wouldn't say damage, but there were a lot of pre-existing defects because some of the furniture isn't brand new. It's just a little bit aged. So yeah, that's everything for the reception room. Carpets, stains, blind maintenance issue, and the window sills and window frames cleaning issues. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.